I'm Megan Skidmore. For 2.5 years, I have been talking about evolving faith journeys. I started to tire of the heaviness of this focus. I had the clear message come through. It is time for Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast to evolve into Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. With the same vulnerability and unapologetic authenticity, I will be focusing on the joy in this journey, the life and the living that comes on the other side of maybe, on the other side of what's possible. I want to talk about claiming spiritual sovereignty and becoming your own captain of your vessel. Let's celebrate releasing what no longer aligns for you and connecting with your higher power and honor expanding your energy field to make room for all things new. The vibration is high this month on Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. Pretense is dropped and caution thrown to the wind in each interview. I am dropping a new episode daily, spotlighting one of the amazing soul-led, heart-centered authors of Joan of Arc Publishing, or JOA Publishing, founded by Kira Brinton. Like the namesake for this publishing house, each one embodies the fearless, God-centered spirit left by the legacy of Joan of Arc. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single one. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode in our month-long JOA book club. Hopefully, you've been following along and hearing all these powerhouse women tell their stories. And today, I have Angel Lyn with me. I cannot wait for you to get to know her and her story and where she's been and how she got to where she's at today. So welcome to the podcast, Angel.
Thank you so much. This is so fun to visit with you. And I love that you're interviewing all these authors and sharing our stories.
They're amazing stories, and you can't make this stuff up. So let's just jump right in, Angel. Can you share with folks just a little bit about you, your background, and all those things?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I was born and raised in southern Utah in a small town back then called St. George. And I grew up in such a sheltered environment. I was raised in knowing everybody in my neighborhood because we all went to the same church. We all went to the same elementary schools. I grew up with the same cohort of kids, my whole life through middle school and high school. And I had a very great upbringing. And then I served a mission for the LDS Church in Spain. When I came back, I went to school at BYU-Hawaii. And I loved studying there because of the diversity. And I studied social work and was preparing to go into clinical mental health field when I decided to get married, had the opportunity to get married. And I almost didn't go on to graduate school because I felt like, well, I don't need to go to college anymore because it's my job to get married and stay home and have children. And I'm grateful that I had a really wonderful professor, a woman from New Zealand who was a great mentor. And she said, Angel, that's entry level stuff. Having a family and that you can do that. And what else are you going to do to change the world? And I'm so grateful that she said that to me because I decided if we were going to go on to graduate school, my husband was going, I should go too. So I'm grateful that I did receive that master's in clinical social work and started practicing just a little bit and was disillusioned. So my career track that I thought I would do even just to supplement our income or just because it interested me. When I got into the clinical mental health fields, I was running into ethical dilemmas day after day after day. I felt like human behavior was really seen through the lens of pathology and nobody was looking at the genius. Every single deficit that I could see or that we studied, there was an equal gift. I mean, whether we were looking at children with autism or people with ADHD or just different things, it was really through this lens of they're broken, they need to be fixed, and a heavy push on medication to fix them. So the more and more that I interacted with this, the more it just didn't set well with my soul. And I felt like my clients were not being led to their true worth. They were attaching to labels, to disorders and diagnoses, and they were becoming very codependent on the system that was providing them therapy and medication. And the light was out in their eyes. That was the thing I noticed, is that innate light that is there in us when we're born. It was out. It was gone. They were like zombies. So I took a step back from the clinical world and began to focus at home. I had 5 sons born in 8 years, and they became my clients. As I homeschooled them and studied their nutrition and mental health, I became really fascinated that there was a missing component from my education. Movement, like exercise and great nutrition, have a huge impact on mental health.
Yes.
And we were not taught that health coaching aspect, that now that's becoming a big thing. Health coaching is a career all in itself. But to combine those two became a passion of mine, studying health and nutrition and how it can affect mental health and what the supplement options are. If we are struggling with depression and anxiety, there are often nutritional deficits that people can supplement and it can really help to overcome.
I've
So
been thinking about that. Yeah, I love that you're bringing that up.
I'm really passionate about that. I have lost a lot of dear ones, friends, children, and people that I've known to suicide. And when I realize what it takes, I've also sat with people in that space where they are really close to taking their life. And time again, it's like they've walked down this ladder of beliefs further and further into the darkness of their minds. And it often starts with common beliefs that we all have, is a fear of failure, followed by the next rung on the ladder down is the fear of I'm not good enough, which means I'm not lovable, which means I'm not worthy. And then that last rung, in my opinion, is hopelessness. So when you are struggling with your worth for long enough that it feels like it's hopeless, that's when the only exit
Right.
makes sense. And I have so much compassion for people in that space. And I've seen so many turnarounds from people who, get their nutrition together, even their gut health. Healing the gut actually has a huge gut brain connection. And a lot of times the gut is unhealthy, the microbiome's off, there's parasites and things that in and of itself, getting healthy there has changed people's whole outlook on life. So I'm very passionate about that as one aspect of my life.
I believe it. We met this past week for the first time in person. And one of the things I love about this community that Kara Brenton has created, along with Juliet Wright, the Mosaic Network, that is the primary focus is on our gifts. You use the word genius and how so much of humanity has been classified or categorized pathologically. And I love that viewpoint. I love that angle. It aligns so much more with what I believe is the divine within us already.
Yeah. It led me into homeschooling because there are paradigms in homeschooling and even unschooling and classical education. There are these paradigms that fit the children. Whereas we have taken people and we've put them on a conveyor belt education system, one size fits all. And it's lacking. A lot of the schools have pulled the creativity. They've pulled the arts and the dance and the music. And so we have so many of these children who are empaths who in a typical conveyor belt system are being labeled with things that I don't think they have. I think they're bored to tears.
Yeah.
And so I've studied education a lot and worked with a lot of families in my homeschool communities in Colorado and then in Utah to watch what can happen when you take a child and put them in an environment that matches their genius instead of in an environment that exacerbates their deficit and puts them in comparison and competition with other kids who they are not like. So then they go to the bottom of the barrel. Suddenly they're needing IEPs. And then those kids take on that identity and think they're not smart when they are geniuses. And the sad thing is there's no adults around them that can see and recognize it. I love to recognize, whether it's with kids, teens, or adults, people's genius and be like, can we feed that and mentor that? And as you feed that, less and less are they attached to the limits that they thought they had, because those limitations, they're like a coin. Every limitation, if you flip it over, it is a window to a gift. And if it's mentored, then they become these people who impact society. I remember in grad school learning all these pathological disorder symptoms, and at the same time thinking, if we had these 200, 300, 400 years ago, and we were operating back then like we are now, all of our great composers, philosophers, writers, artists, dancers, they would have been institutionalized or medicated. Because these symptoms are in the biographies of these greats. The way that you think differently and you act differently. But they were put in situations where they were mentored or tutored, quite often privately, not in public schools. So I get wound up around this.
Yes, you do. And I'm so glad you do. We all have our passions, and I think that's on purpose. I'm seeing a parallel here. You're talking about kind of secular education, public education, you shifted to homeschooling, how you had questions about you. It just didn't align for you,
Mhm.
right? And you didn't see it spotlighting or focusing on or expanding the gifts of your children and other children around you.
Yeah.
And that is so much like, or can be so much like a more spiritual journey or faith journey, right? We have this prescribed way of learning, and then comes a point where it just doesn't align anymore. It just, you don't fit the, you called it conveyor belt style.
Conveyor belts. Yeah, the one size is the right way. And
Yeah.
it took me years to come to that area of my life where I was dismantling things on a mental health level and then a medical level, as I'm having babies and they're telling me you have to do it this and this way. I actually then chose a home birth. What if I don't have to do it that way? And then educating my kids, well, you have to put them in preschool. There's so much pressure. What if I don't, So then just 8 years ago, the same deprogramming or dismantling showed up in my life when it came to religion.
Okay.
And I was raised LDS Mormon. I was married to a religious leader. We had our 5 kids. I was often serving in the leadership positions for women. And one day I got a phone call. There was a warrant out for my husband's arrest. And
Okay.
it came in like such a shock because I had no awareness. And it was a miracle. I call it the
Came out of
catalyst.
the blue. You had no warning. You
No,
met.
no warning. No
Wow.
warning. I look back and I think how is that even possible that you're living with someone, raising a family, and like you don't even know them, you know? I
Right.
think that's one of the creepiest things ever, actually, to be that close to someone and not know who they are, how they tick, what they're up to. And so it was a great catalyst for a spiritual awakening. And
Yeah.
what happened was I walked right into my bedroom and I looked at all these resource materials that I had. We only had church printed materials because we were told that that's where the truth was about anything and to be leery of reading things, books from the world. And I scanned all that material on my bookshelf and I thought, I know this really well, and I can't think of one chapter or verse that says what to do when there's a warrant out for your husband's arrest.
Oh,
So now what?
right.
So now I'm so used to
Got to
turning,
go off grid.
yeah, give me the textbook answer, read your scriptures, pray, go to church. It's not going to work right now. It's not going to work for me. So I actually just paused and I contemplated, what does this mean? Okay, if I can't find a direct answer in that material, and if I can't turn to my spouse to counsel with, it just hit me like lightning. You have been outsourcing your authority your entire life, Angel, to external voices. And I was like, wow, where is me? Who am I? What am I? Am I just this little sheep? Am I a marionette puppet? Like, what have I become? I had just put my trust. And of course, there was that betrayal. Trauma was there. I was feeling that. Like, if I can't even trust my husband, why would I call any other human? But
Exactly.
but I'm glad that that led me, that it shook me up so much to not trust another person in that moment, because for the first time, I would say in my adult life, it took me back to my soul. And as I did that, I remembered as a little kid, I was really connected to this voice. I really was independent and outgoing and self confident. And slowly that was whittled away from me as I learned to morph into what the world wanted me to be and should be. And especially when it came to religion, because that was salvation. That was my eternal salvation. If I did not do things this way, in this pattern, I would not make it to heaven. And once I was married and had kids, then I was so afraid of leading anyone astray that I towed the line.
Yeah, that's a really tough spot to be in, how you described that, your trust with your husband was gone. You felt very betrayed. And you mentioned earlier in the podcast, he was in a leadership position. Your husband served in
Mhm.
various leadership capacities.
Yeah.
And in the conservative LDS faith, we're counseled to go to our leaders, but then what happens when a situation like yours comes and the cognitive dissonance can just be, I'm sure it was just overwhelming or ever present for you, and how important and necessary and imperative that you were able to feel at liberty or give yourself permission to
Yeah.
just Listen, you
Mhm.
decide not that. I mean, you had, but usually it was to pray about it and you'll receive the answer that X, Y,
Align.
Z.
It aligns with what we're telling you. Yeah, and when my husband was also my priesthood leader, my church representative, yeah, it was like, who do I go to? I actually reached out to the next higher up in authority. And we went back and forth on email, and he kept wanting to talk to us together. And I'm saying, I need support. Angel needs someone to talk to in a safe space because my husband and I are not having honest conversations. I can't get the truth out of him. And
Right.
I got an email back from this leader that said, "You have no respect for priesthood authority. Good luck with your life."
Oh,
Literally were his words, quote unquote. So I felt super alone, but turned to myself. And here's where the beautiful part. This is what God led me to. This was all part of the plan. And I truly feel that if there is anything before and after this life, then everything is purposeful. And I even believe that my relationship with my husband and the staging of these events were set up and scripted much like a play. Like this is exactly how it needed to play out so that I would pause and I would go inward and upward. That's what I call it now. I don't necessarily say that I prayed or I did. I just call it I need to go inward and upward. And I needed to check with myself and say, what do I do now? I have to trust Angel. And Angel, what do you want me to do? And the
yeah.
thought came to me, said, put chicken in the crock pot. It was one of the weirdest things ever. What does that have to do with the crisis I'm in right now? But as soon as I had that resistance and had that thought, a very tempered thought came back and said, did you not just ask me? Did you not just ask for direction? I was like, wow, let's experiment. I did ask. And if I push away the first thought because it's unfamiliar, how ignorant of me. If it was going to be a familiar answer, then I don't need help from it. Like, of
Right.
course, inspiration's going to
Right.
be bigger than what I expected. So I just followed it. I went in, started to put chicken in the crock pot, and only then remembered I have 5 kids who don't know what's happening and they're going to need to eat dinner today.
As part of my commitment to giving back, every first Friday of the month, I offer a free coaching hour. Anyone is welcome to join, and you may leave your camera off and change your name if you would like to remain anonymous. This is an opportunity to get introduced to my style of holistic coaching and what it would be like to work with me. Gain real skills, insight relevant to you, and fresh perspective on life circumstances. Each month is a different topic. For those attending, there will be opportunities for a complimentary one-off energy alignment session. Once registered, you will have access to discount codes for my other offerings. To get the link, including all the resources, register to complete the agreement at the link in the show notes.
And I was going to need to take over some business things right away. So I thought that, wow, this spirit, this soul of mine, God, whatever's talking to me in this moment is actually can help me in the smallest details in my life. And I began to go inward and upward every day. What would you have me do today? Like I have a to-do list, I have a calendar, I have a schedule, but first things first, what do I not have written down that you need me to do? And miracle after miracle began to happen that would have me do things that were completely off the books. I want to share one. It came shortly after. I just kept doing my day and doing, I wasn't necessarily planning to leave my husband or shake things up on my end. I surrendered and said, whatever this spirit wants me to do, I'll do. And one Sunday morning, I got dressed and was headed for church as normal. But I realized I'm just doing this out of routine because I've done this every Sunday my whole life.
Yes.
So while driving, I asked Spirit, what would you have me do on this day? And the thought came, go to the grocery store. That was so foreign to me because I had been raised to believe that shopping on Sunday was breaking a commandment. It was not keeping the Sabbath day holy. But again, I thought, if there's a spirit and I ask a question, I need to experiment to see if
Right.
this is the divine or not. So I just trusted it, drove right past the church and headed down a few more blocks to the grocery store. And I remember getting out of the car and looking around with shame because I was afraid people in my congregation would be passing and seeing me. And that's what I started to recognize. Shame is such a deep part of
Yes.
why I was doing what I was doing. So I breathed out the shame and I breathed in. This is an experiment and I want to know what happens. So I walk into the store without even a grocery list. But as soon as the doors open, the greeter was an inactive member of our congregation, meaning someone on the list that we're supposed to fellowship because she doesn't always come. When she does come, she wears immodest sleeveless dresses. She's got her tattoos. She
Right.
smells like these things, all these judgmental things. And there she was. And I just looked at and I smiled at her. And then I said, Spirit, what would you have me do? And the Spirit said, give her a hug. And she wasn't a real friendly person, but she and I had bantered enough when we saw each other. She was very sarcastic that we had some rapport. So I opened up my arms and I said, hey, give me a hug. And she kind of pulled back and was curious, like, where's this coming from? I'd never hugged her before. And I just went, oh, come on, you know you want one. And I hugged her, unknowing this is awkward. I'm telling the Spirit, this is awkward. And then I asked the Spirit, what do you want me to do now? Because she tried to do the pat, pat, and tap out. And the Spirit's like, hold on, just hold on. And so it was
Wow.
like, just pour love into her, pour love into her, and tell her it's so good to see her. And as I did that, I felt what I would consider the Spirit of Jesus Christ saying, where do you think you would find me on the Sabbath? Do you think I sat my butt in a pew and listened to people talk? Or do you think I went around loving people? And I couldn't believe that my whole life I had been so afraid to break the Sabbath or to be seen outside of the church doing something that others don't think I do, that I had never thought this is the day to go look for people.
That is so profound. That is deeply touching. Wow. So one of the things I have begun to focus on as I have reimagined my podcast at the beginning of 2025 now is the living on the beyond the shadow of doubt, and how much joy comes, how much life there is to embrace and expect and experience when it's so scary in the beginning.
Yeah.
It is so scary to step outside of what you've been told is the only way. Even just, I experienced the shame just like you did. Even just acknowledging that I had doubts, even just trying to admit to myself, yes, I have questions, like this isn't making sense, right? So much shame.
Yeah.
So I want to focus on those moments of bliss. And you just shared one. That's blissful.
So blissful, so
And
joyful, so much love. My heart felt like it was growing with these type of trusting moments where I would say, what do you want me to do? And a thought would come in and like, that makes no sense. All right, let's go for it. It became like this adventure, like choose your own adventure, but it was like, I'm going to get something. And every time I acted on it, it was a miraculous flowering of my heart. And for the first time in my life, I realized where worth comes from. Going back to those therapy moments where everybody ultimately is struggling with worth, no matter whether or not they're going to therapy for depression, marital problems, abuse problems, substance abuse, no matter what the symptoms were. It was always about self-worth. I'm going to tell you this.
yes,
I've never found another way to gain a knowledge of your worth than experimenting on this inward and upward process. Ask a question, whether you feel like you're taking it to God or to your soul or to source or the truth, whatever your source of truth is, take a question in, breathe and receive the thought that comes. Take the time to breathe it into your body, accepting it. Breathe out doubt and fear. Trust that you are capable of connecting to this source of creation, and then act with courage. When you do that and you realize that you are a partner with the divine, with the source of truth, with the source of unconditional love, I remember just celebrating. There is no achievement, no title, no amount of money that could make me feel more worthy than the fact that I partner with the divine and we co-create miracles and we bless lives, and I am led that I am worthy in any moment. I am worthy to tap into that source, and I am capable of receiving direct messages, and I'm courageous enough to act. that is when my worth came to the surface and I realized I don't need anything else as validation in my life to know that I'm good enough. I am a channel of the divine.
I just I just absorbed all of that in, Angel, and my vibration is so high. I am floating in a symbolic but kind of real way, actually. I can feel it in my body. That's so there's just not words for it. I used to call my I used to call this a pivot in my faith journey, and then that moved to just a faith journey and faith expansion, and now I just call it a spiritual awakening. That is what resonates the most for me, how close we are to the divine already, right here, right now. It is within us, and I am learning that. I love your method. Thank you so much for sharing inward and upward. I know that's
Mhm.
going to touch so many hearts that are listening. So share with us, Angel, how your JOA publication came into the mix, and share all about your book.
So I was having these miraculous experiences daily, and several months went by. And one of my questions, what would you have me do? The thought came, write these experiences, journal this. And I was like,
Mm.
why? I hadn't written in the journal since I started having kids because I didn't have time. But it
Oh,
just, then the thought, I was like, what
yeah.
for? And I said, these are changing me. I'm learning these lessons. Why do I need to write them down? And the spirit said, one day you'll write a book about it. And I was like, what? All right. If so, I just started organizing by theme, by experiences that I was having. And then one day, well, one more really miraculous thing that story happened is I was actually told by the spirit to separate from my husband. And it was so challenging for me to have that thought. I kept checking, is this my ego? Is this vengeance? Is this wanting to, stick it to him or betray him? And like, no, because I would be fine just continuing on and, enduring to the end and pushing forward. But I kept having it. I kind of pushed it aside and weeks went by and it came back strong again. And then the third time it just came and it was like, this is the final time. Either you act on this or it goes away. And I was like, this goes against what I was taught. I was taught that we are to be married for time and all eternity. And I said, what if I do choose to leave this marriage? And the spirit said, you can choose. If you stay, nothing's going to change in the dynamics of the relationship. Like you will not ever get him to be honest, and you will keep playing your part in it. I was super resentful and I was very condescending and frustrated with him a lot just for his way of being. And I had noticed that through this time period. Um, and I said, Spirit, what if I do leave? And the Spirit said, you will be an instrument, a therapeutic instrument in healing relationships with men and women. And I laughed because that seemed ridiculous considering that my relationship was in shambles. But I did listen. And when I listened, my next question was, I don't even know how to be a single mom. I haven't had a job in years. I have no money. What do I do now? And the spirit said, go away from town and go somewhere in nature. You need to go into nature and seek me. So I was asking, what do you want me to do and where do you want me to go every day? And I learned in this experience a very powerful pivot from the way I had been taught to pray. Several days after that inspiration had come that I needed to leave town and go somewhere on my own to get inspiration, a friend said, I just bought a home in Maui. Come visit me. And I thought, hey, if there's ever been a great place to go. And I got online and looked at the tickets, and the round trip ticket was $590 at the time. And my heart sank and I dropped into fear. The fear, I don't have that money. I could go sell plasma or clean houses and get it. But even if I did, how would my bishop look at me when I'm getting help with my rent this month? What would my mom think of me? Oh, how could you leave your kids and go to Hawaii? What would people say? So I went right into this fear of judgment and how people would talk about me. If you don't have money, how are you going to Hawaii? And it's all the lessons that have come through the divine challenge the reputation. They will shake up your idol of your reputation because that's what I was worshiping. And when I felt that and I was caving to it and pushing away from that instruction, all of a sudden I felt this coldness come over my whole body. I can only liken it to being locked in a cellar. It was like being a little kid locked in my grandma's cellar, like that memory, as if that's we used to play down in the cellar, and I would feel the coldness and the dampness and the darkness. That sensation hit my body, and I said, God, what just happened? And God said, you just chose fear over truth. You are worshiping fear. So for the first time in my life, I repented of the fear. Simply that. Simply that. God, in this moment, I acknowledge that I dropped into fear, and that fear is eclipsing my trust in you. Forgive me of this, and I promise to trust in your word. The next day, mail came, and as I'm opening the mail, there was a letter from my insurance company, and it was Geico, and we had travel insurance because of our business, and it said you overpaid in the last quarter. Here's a reimbursement check for $590, the exact dollar amount. And that's when I knew one day I will write a book or I will tell this story because you can't make this up.
No. Wow. I cannot wait for more hands to get your book in their hands. Tell us the name of it, and we'll also put it in the show notes.
Hey, so it's called Soul-U-lar Evolution, but it's spelled Soul, referring to your soul.
Hmm.
Soul-U-lar Evolution, a Mormon woman's transcendent journey to love by Angel Lyn.
Okay.
And I was able to meet Kira in 2021. Other miracles came into place. I was inherited money right before I met her with the spirit's impression that said, this year, use all your extra funds to publish a book. And then it just lined up. I said, what extra funds at the time? And then 3 weeks later, my mom's like, hey, I have some money for you out of the blue, never expecting an inheritance from grandparents that had died a decade earlier. And then I was introduced to Kira months later, and I had the exact amount that I needed to invest in her mentoring. So my book came out in December of 2023 and has these stories and so many more of first half is memoir, sharing these miracles, and then the second half is step-by-step experiments. So it's breaking down the principles like the four steps I gave you earlier: ask, breathe and receive, trust, act with courage, and just helping people tap into their body as a barometer for truth and how to
Yes.
recognize that. We just have to increase our awareness that the body is constantly sending signals through restriction and expansion as to when fear, error, and fallacy are present. And the expansion or resonance in the body shows us when we are on the path of light, truth, love, joy, peace, and freedom. The body does that just like it does when music is dissonant, it cringes. And when it's resonant, it expands. Your body can tell when something is in tune or off key. And when you
Yes.
take that musical analogy and you realize I can put it into the frequency of fear and love or truth and error, my body is still resonating. We can tune our frequencies to truth and then become our own moral authority,
Yes.
knowing the divine is speaking to us and just letting what anyone else's opinions are take second place to what our creator is telling us to do.
Angel, thank you for showing us your sovereign energy. This is just so beautiful. If I feel so strongly that part of my work, part of my mission is to help women change their relationship with money. Money is really a relationship, and know that it is in abundance. It is there. Just like you had to lean into that. You had to listen and believe that it was available for you. And we just want to know. We want to have control. We think that's the way it works. And that's just such an amazing example of surrender. Surrendering to what you're being taught, to what you're being, those whispers, or maybe it's louder than that, and just believe and strike out the fear. Uh, we're short on, I can't not bring up, you've brought up several times how nature is so healing for you. You created an amazing event. I didn't get to go to the first one, but you're going to have another one this year, Yin on Fire.
Yes.
I want folks to be able to know about this. We'll put the link for it in the show notes.
Great.
information about it. I don't know if registration is open just yet, but tell us.
Yes, we're in our third year. There's an event called Yin on Fire, like the yin yang energy. Yin is feminine energy, and Yin on Fire is about igniting the passion and creation energy within all of us. All beings have yin and yang energy. So this is an event for everyone 18 and up. It's in southern Utah. The website's yinonfire.com. It's in September 18th through the 21st, and it's a 4-day, 3-night outdoor event. We call it a soul sibling family reunion, like the souls. It's not biological family reunion, but it's the hearts and souls that are drawn together, seeking healing of the mind, body, heart, and spirit. We have workshops across those days with practitioners from holistic medicine to shamans. We have just such a breadth of practitioners. We have yoga classes, dances, all different kinds of sound healing experiences. We have concerts every night. It is such an incredible event, and this will be our third year. We had 1,000 people there last year on our second year, so it is growing momentum. But the magic is the types of people that it draws in, and watching people find true heart connections, friends that last, people they end up collaborating with in business or healing modalities or retreats. It is such a fabulous event, and we invite you to look that up. And if it calls to you, please come join the Soul family.
That is amazing. Yes, I will leave that for listeners. So just one last question I ask all of my guests, and that is, what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt?
What it means to me is to live in the light of love. The opposite of the shadow of doubt is to live in the light of love, is to be able to know how to turn my focus and attention and intention toward the source of creation and ask questions and operate from a place of trusting that I am led, I am spoken to, I'm never alone, and I live in the light of that unconditional love.
Wow. So beautifully said. So I'm just looking for one-word answers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw out some for fun questions for our listeners to get to know you. Tell us your favorite book.
Byron Katie's book called Loving What Is.
And are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Neither. It depends on the day. I don't believe in those words.
I love it. Who's your favorite artist?
Oh, like which kind? Musical artist? Oh, I think Lauren Daigle comes to mind, a musician.
Perfect. And are you a night owl or a morning lark?
It really depends too.
I figured.
It depends on if kids have kept me up. I'm going to say night owl sometimes, but I love when the house is quiet. I love when I get bursts of energy and it's nighttime and everyone and the whole world is quiet. That's one of my favorites.
I don't
Yeah.
get those so much anymore.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Tell us your celebrity crush.
I don't have one.
That's okay. You don't have to.
I'm really not into. I don't even know who is a celebrity. Unless I think Kira Brinton.
Yeah,
She's my favorite celebrity.
Right.
You can see her every day.
For real. Do you do still or carbonated water, or are you diet soda fan or some other fun beverage?
Oh, distilled water, room temperature with lemon.
And finally, the furthest place that you have traveled.
New Zealand, 4 times. It's my favorite space.
So lucky. I've been there once. It is beautiful there.
Fun.
It has been a pleasure, Angel. I will leave all of your contact info in the show notes for our guests. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. It's what a privilege to know you. And thank you for your mission. Thank you for carrying the message out and reaching hearts.
For sure.
Writer, teacher, author, Mormon scholar, and founder of Dialogue Journal, Eugene England said, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue." As a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, my hope is that Living Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is an extension of that vision. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more, or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.